All right, this is going to be a homework help on lesson 7.11, also dealing with solving problems by quadratic equations by factoring. So for this first one, I would suggest pause right now. After you read the question, you want to come up with an equation, and then we'll go through the protocol of solving it. So one integer is 8 more than another. So our first integer will be x. Our next integer is 8 more than x, and we're going to multiply them to get a product, multiplying two factors, of 84. So this is one integer. The other integer is 8 more than that, and the product of this is 84. So the equation would be x squared, as we multiply this, plus 8x again. And now I'm going to take my 84, transpose it to this side, opposite sign, and that equals 0. So now we have to factor this. And I'm going to pause, as you do also, to see what you get when you factor this. So the factors may not have immediately jumped out at you. So again, this method that I suggested in the flipped classroom video, you take your C term and tease apart what are the factors. Now if I multiply the 2 times 2 times 3, this gives me a 12 and a 7, 12 and a 7. The difference is only 5, so that's not going to work. But I tried it. So I have to look for another combination. Well, if I go 2 times 3 is 6, and 2 times 7 is 14. Yes, now the difference is 8. So I need a positive for the 14, and I need a negative for the 6. Now, when I do this, I get here x equals, again, using the other work here, this is a positive 6, and this is a negative 14. Now, you can think of this as going up here. If our smaller integer is 6, and this one here is 14, that will give you the answer. Now, theoretically, you could put the negative 14 in there, and then the 6, but I think this is what they're looking for here. So let's do that and see what happens. So I'm going to put, let's see if I get out of this, a 6 here and a 14 there, and submit. They say I have it correct. Okay. Now another type of problem is something like this. The product of two consecutive even integers. So again, see if you can set up the equation while we pause. So the first integer is x. The next even one would be x plus 2, and that equals 840. So we're going to put it in standard form, x squared plus 2x transpose this, a negative 840 equals 0. X. Now, when we go using our technique here, 840 divided by 2 gives us 420. And then we keep working that down. Well, it took me a while to do this, and I know it will take you probably a while. But if I do these three together here, I get a 15 times 2 is 30. And then 4 times 7 is 28. The difference here, this would be a plus and this would be a minus. So when you solve these equations, this is going to be x equals a negative 30, and this will be x equals a positive 28. So I would put a 28 there and a 30 there. Now, theoretically, you could put a negative 30 and a negative 28, but I think these are the ones they're looking for. Let's do that and see what we get. And they're saying that we're correct. Again, this took a lot more time than I'm showing because I had to do all of this and think of it and work it out. Hopefully, we're offering you a good strategy for doing these. There's no easy way. Now, another kind of problem is something like this, where you have a square. Not making too good a square, but the area is 625. So it's this side times this side, so it's s squared equals 625, and in the standard form it's going to be s squared minus 625 equals 0. Factoring that, this is the difference of perfect squares. 625 is 25 times 25. One's plus, one's minus. So here, S is going to be, this one, 25. So if we put a 25 there, that would be, or that's going to be the answer. Now, another way of doing this, by the way, and you'll be working on this later in the course, is if you take the square root of this side, this is S, and then the square root of this side, that's 25. So for this special one here, this is like a super shortcut. But right now we're using this method. We'll keep this one short. And putting the 25 in there and submitting the answer, we have that one correct. All right, this is a very typical one that you're going to be getting. After reading it carefully, see if you can come up with an equation. So again, there are these rows in a theater, and there's so many seats in each row. So how many more seats are there than rows? Well, the number of rows is 6 less than the number of seats. So in a sense, there are 6 more seats in each row than the number of rows. So our equation would be x for the number of rows And then now for the number of seats, there's 6 more seats. Again, there's different ways possibly to set this up, but I think this is a good way. And then the product of the number of rows times the number of seats is going to be 952. So we get x squared plus 6x minus 952 equals 0. And we need to factor that. And I would suggest that you're going to use that technique, 952, and figure out what the combination of numbers are to get the difference of 6. I'll pause while I do that. Now, this gets to be a little tricky. Again, 2 into there is easy. 2 into there is easy. 2 into there is easy. Then I get a 119, and that's not easy. Now, it's not even, so you can't take out a 2. If I add up the digits, I get 2 and 9 is 11, so I can't take out 3's. So what can I possibly take out? Well, it has to be another prime number. So I tried a 7, because that's the next prime. And I got a 17, so that worked out really well. Now, I'm looking for combinations of these factors that are going to give me a difference of 6. So again, I had to work on that just like you would. So I'm going to go 2 times 17, which is 34. And then I get a 2 times 2 is 4 times 7, which is a 28. So 28 times 34 is 952. Now this is a plus. So this one's going to be plus, and this one's going to be minus. So when I equate each of these to 0 using the zero factor property, I get x equals 28. X equals a negative 34. Well, you can't have a number of rows of 34. The answer here is 28. That's the number of rows. That's what x is. Now, if they asked how many seats are there, which they're not asking, they're asking for rows here. Rows. The number of seats would be 34. You would add 6 to each 28 to give you a positive 34. But they're asking for rows here. So I'm going to put in there a 28. And we'll check it out. And I have that one done. Okay, this is a little over 10 minutes, but again, I spent many more than 10 minutes working these examples because they are challenging, but hopefully this is giving you a strategy for doing them.